governments are thinking a lot more about actually, should we have more protection around that? And therefore deals are being called in for review. So we've got the Foreign Direct Investment Regime in the UK, which is National Security Investment Act. We've got CFIUS in the US. So regulatory aspects of deal are certainly coming into play on that piece, and deals are subject to more review. And therefore that means deals are taking more time.
You're listening to the Global Workforce Podcast with me, George Britton. Each week, we interview an industry expert to dive deeper into the world of managing a global workforce and discuss the big strategic challenges that you're going to encounter along the way. This episode is brought to you by Omnipresent, the global employment platform that allows you to employ anyone, anywhere without having to set up an entity. Designed, built, and supported by global employment experts, Omnipresent takes care of your international employees and contractors, so you don't have to worry about payroll, HR, or compliance issues, making it easier, faster, and safer to expand internationally. My guest today is Ali Ramadan, a partner at Goodwin's Technology and Life Sciences Groups. In particular, Ali specializes in angel, seed, venture, and growth capital financing and cross-border M&A. His clients include startups, high-growth companies, and investors, both institutional and corporate, operating in the technology sector, including the AI, climate, fintech, food tech, health tech, prop tech, and digital media industries. He was highlighted as a leading individual in Chambers UK 2024 and Legal 500 UK 2024 for venture capital and M&A. Welcome, Ali. Delighted to have you on the podcast today.
Thanks, George. Great to be here.
Excellent. So today you're joining us to talk about trend in cross-border M&A. Now, 2023 was a fairly flat year in terms of activity, but I'm curious to get your take on, now we're at the halfway point in 2024, what kind of trends are you seeing right now in the market?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting time, right? You're right. 2023 was pretty flat. There was a sort of sense of buyer caution, economic uncertainty, concerns about inflation, monetary policy, regulation, geopolitical headwinds. And that's kind of been consistent for the first half of this year as well, because deal activity hasn't really sort of picked up that much. Interest rates haven't come down as quickly as people had hoped. Inflation is a bit stubborn. So when you look at the numbers for the first half of 2024, deal value of 1.3 trillion, that's global M&A deal value. That's up 5% on the half year of 2023. And you had about 21,500 deals globally. And that's the 30% decline on the first half of 2023. So when you sort of look at the numbers, it still feels like a deal caution, and no one likes 130 people want to do deals in a certain deal environment. But what you are seeing is some interesting things. So I suppose green shoot that is coming back. So one thing we are seeing is mega deals are happening. So in the first half of this year, we've had the first 5 mega deals. And by that I mean sort of $1 billion deal. And that's a 16% increase on a year ago. And those deals have been led mainly in the US, and the two sectors that are really dominating those deals are technology and energy. So you dig a bit deeper into that and look at that. So sector-specific deals, like technology, for example, we've had M&A deal volumes actually increase. I think there's a 42% increase in the first quarter of this year. And the expectation is that's going to continue to happen. There'll be continued M&A activity in tech this year, and that will continue into 2025 as well. And one element of that is you've got a lot of strategic buyers who, want to use the tech rather than make money from it, and looking at acquiring them. The environment allows that to do so. There's lots of enterprises which have money to do so. There's lots of early stage tech companies who necessarily can't raise in this environment. So they're good acquisition targets. You're seeing in terms of just tech M&A, generally it's software. M&A has led the market. We had some really big deals in that space. So Synopsys, they deferred to $2.5 billion acquisition, raised acquisition allowances. And you're seeing overall that sort of in the first half of this year, there was 6 software mega deals announced. And compared to 2023, there was 4 in total. So the signs are there that deal activity is happening. These mega deals, they start to penetrate for other sectors. I think we'll start to see a lot more activity in the sector. Energy is another space where we've seen a lot of activity. And that's being driven really by this worldwide transition to renewable energy sources in the oil and gas sectors, powers and utilities. This expectation that M&A opportunities to invest place a lot of value on sort of government targets to hit net zero. So that would potentially promote lots of M&A activity. And then the last thing I'd say we've seen is around sort of take private. So what we've seen is a lot of activity in take private, the highest level in about 2 decades. And that's been in technology, industrials, energy, defense, consumer, all space where we've seen PE firms lead delistings. And this take private aspect has been really driven by the PE firm. And that's been an interesting trend. I think we'll start to see that start to continue as well.
It's really interesting. There's loads to unpack there, right? So it sounds like there's generally a positive, steadily positive, like tone on the market, certainly with some more of these mega deals coming through. Interesting that you're talking about PE firms probably having a bit more money to spend, a bit more keeping the powder dry the last month, over the last year or so, and that's quite an interesting thing. And energy as well. I think so. This is the first podcast we've recorded since the UK election, but also it feels like every week there's a different circumstance in the US election as well. I'm curious, and you mentioned a bit about how geopolitical things are affecting markets. What are you kind of seeing at the moment in terms of activity?
So it's very up and down. So I mean, on the M&A side, there is activity there. It's kind of on the bigger side of stuff. There is a little bit of activity around sort of companies which kind of it feeds into the funding piece. So if you look at technology, for example, on the technology side, it's a tough funding environment. Seed stage financing, early stage financing have been happening. The later growth stage financing was less so. That's off the back of a pandemic period where we have sort of sustained high valuation environment, lots of deal activity. And then that's sort of coming off COVID, we've seen less activity there. So there is M&A opportunity in that market, and where companies can't raise and the options are M&A. So we see a little bit of activity there. But on the whole, actually, it's been playing out to how we sort of see the numbers. It has been a relatively quiet environment for the moment. Everyone expects it to pick up, but because of the uncertainty in the market, no one likes election. Well, election would lead to policy direction change. People are holding out. Inflation, interest rates being high means deals cost more. So people are just sort of waiting for that right deal environment. There's a lot of pent-up demand, and there's a lot of pent-up demand in PE. So everyone thinks it's not a matter of if it's going to happen, it's a matter of when. And I think for the moment, we're just seeing a lot of activity whereby it's deals which have to get done, but no deals which really need to get done.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that makes a lot of sense. And they just announced today that inflation has remained at 2% in the UK. So I won't ask you for a hot take on that necessarily off of that, but yeah, it's really interesting to see if that will start to affect interest rates and then things that are happening in the markets as well.
Yeah, exactly. Hope they'll start to come down, right? The European Central Bank has put them down. So, in theory, they should go.
Yeah, hopefully they'll follow suit in the UK and the US. I was speaking with somebody the other day actually in the climate tech space, and literally after the first Biden-Trump debate, they started to change hiring plans because of the expected changes in regulation and how that starts affecting. So I think it's when things can pivot so quickly based off of like some of these activities, it does have a big impact on business, and you can start to see it change things in real time.
Yeah.
But I'm curious to get your take on like the regulation and government side of things here. So if those things do come to pass, what would you expect to see like happening in different industries as a result?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting one, right? So on sort of the regulatory front, you are seeing a lot more sort of merger control, foreign direct investment regimes, and that's really being fueled by this aspect of effectively national security review, government thinking more about sort of sensitive technology. So, for example, if it's critical technology, if it's healthcare, if it's infrastructure, government are thinking a lot more about actually should we have more protection around that, and therefore deals are being called in for review. So we've got the foreign direct investment regime in the UK, which is National Security Investment Act. We've got CFIUS in the US. So regulatory aspects of deal are certainly coming into play on that piece, and deals are subject to more review. And therefore that means deals are taking more time. You need to do more analysis around those deals and think about structure. You're generally having also the sort of merger control aspect of more scrutiny of deals, and that's particularly playing out in tech quite a bit as well. So you've got this aspect of the big tech aspect, and sort of governments, there's been a lot of press around sort of governments not liking big tech and thinking about sort of how they can sort of limit the influence because it's restricting effectively consumer competition or competition in the market for consumers. And you've seen a bit of that playing out. So you've seen sort of regulators looking to take a tougher stance here. Some legislative proposals around sort of merger regulation control being changed for digital markets. we've seen deals fall through, so not fall through, but not sort of take off. So Adobe at the end of last year abandoned its 20 billion proposed acquisition of Figma, due to the UK CMA saying it's sort of well, and then so approve it. You saw Amazon again, sort of the potential acquisition of iRobot again didn't go through because of the EU scrutiny on that. And then within that framework, so you're seeing sort of the AI piece. There's a lot of hype on AI, the potential of AI. And that's sort of now come on the radar of the competition authorities. They're now looking at the Microsoft side of OpenAI and whether that was actually a genuine sort of partnership or as an acquisition of control. And all these things just make it a lot more difficult for big tech and generally M&A anyway, because regulatory approval takes time, it takes more cost, it delays deals, potentially leads to fines if you get it wrong. And then also you've got the ongoing compliance aspect of those deals if you do improve, because there's various contingencies that have been the deals through. So it is just a more difficult deal environment in that sense. And I don't think that's going to change in the future. And about getting metrics, getting good advisors, getting on board. It's thinking about that very early on in the process. It's engaging with regulators early on to see if you can sort of structure a deal, but it's being flexible in how you structure that. So be that if it can't be a straight M&A transaction, is it an investment, is it a joint venture?
Yeah, you're touching on a lot of really interesting points there. I think it is generally hard for governments to react to some of these changes, right? I think you can look at things like the rise of social media and how long it took the government to actually react to some of the implications of that. And I think AI is probably the next wave of this, right? And the implications of some of the technology that's out there, and how quickly it's moving means it's got to be governments have to react quickly to some of the implications in here, right? So
Yeah.
I think that makes a lot of sense. I'm curious to get your take on emerging markets. So what are you seeing in terms of like different regions, different countries that might be seeing different levels of activity?
Yeah, it's an interesting area. The emerging market piece is sort of developing, and you're seeing activity there. Interesting because you can see the reasons why there's lots of growth potential in some of these markets. So regions like Asia, Latin America, Africa, they're offering substantial growth opportunities. You've got expanding middle classes, increasing consumer demand, rapid economic development. LATAM's a particularly interesting one because there's lots of lithium there, and that's interesting. So electric car vehicles, battery production. Africa's again an interesting one, lots of fintech going on there, sort of digital banking coming into that, payment, supply chain infrastructure. So lots of activity going on there. You can see the reason for it. Some PE driving that because of obviously the growth opportunity they fund that and the potential to do that. It offers the opportunity for sort of diversification for a lot of investors because they can mitigate the risk of sort of being in more developed markets, which may eventually hit downturn. They can balance out with sort of going into a new market, which promises them growth. It gives them some cost efficiencies because there's obviously cost improvements there in terms of cheaper labor, perhaps lower production costs to help sort of increase overall profitability. And the interesting thing is you are seeing sort of things change sort of driving a bit more activity there. So there are regulatory policies tend to sort of drive people to invest in the emerging market. So tax breaks, favourable regulatory approval, giving incentives to investors to pump money in, and then effectively like a lot of companies now, or a lot of emerging economies are now looking to open up sort of data merged entity to privatization. Therefore, that's an opportunity to invest in. So there is a lot of activity, and I think that's going to continue for the foreseeable.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. There's some huge companies coming out of Africa, certainly fintech companies, as you mentioned. Seems to be a whole new world of opportunity over there that's opening up. And obviously you mentioned AI a bit, so there's clearly like the cornerstones of there being US, China, and maybe UK playing a bit of a part in the middle there.
Yes.
Some really exciting stuff coming on. I'm curious to talk a bit about ESG, like because obviously when you're going through some of these cross-border transactions, you've got companies in one country that might be have a set of rules and regulations that apply to them, and then they start to look further afield at other companies, maybe acquisition targets. How if you were a business leader, what kind of things would you be looking to guide them on and advise them on when they're doing things like this?
ESG.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting ESG because it's on the radar now at the investment level as well. So when we're doing sort of financing rounds, we're seeing investors requiring sort of ESG compliance or ESG policies, thinking about ESG at the outset. it's a very different environment now, and it's becoming a lot more prominent in deals. So we've got governments introducing ESG related laws, compliance, adherence to it. And there's a recognition among investors and shareholders that companies with robust ESG practices are a bit more resilient long term. You're seeing a shift in consumer expectations around wanting to work for companies or support companies or shop companies who sort of think of ESG as responsible and ethical. You've got the energy push as well. So this concept of renewable energy, again, meet that standard. And so when you're sort of from an executive point of view, it's kind of, it's become centered to your business. So it's thinking, having it on the agenda, maybe it's part of your corporate strategy, thinking about it from sort of the DNA of the company. And there's so many different ways you can do it. But again, this transparency, having transparency and reporting, that's going to be key. Lots of requirements now, so disclose what you are doing on terms of the ESG targets, in ensuring it's like embedded into the practice of the firm. So making employees aware that your stakeholders about what you're doing, being transparent on whether you're meeting the ESG targets, if you're not, how you're trying to. Actually building out the team of people who are there specifically to work with ESG compliance and drive ESG compliance. And then when you bring it to cross-border M&A, it becomes important because actually when you're now doing these deals, you need to think about ESG compliance as a matter of, okay, if you're buying a company and you need to look into have they complied with ESG, is there any sort of legal requirements to do that? If they haven't, is there potential liabilities there? So does that feed into you need to think about getting some insurance to cover a potential breach in the future? If you're taking this company on and you're going to combine it with your company, for example, how do you ensure you're going to be ESG compliant going forward? So there's lots of things to unpack there. So it's an evolving area, but it's definitely much on the radar. As I said, the investment level, so now on the M&A level as well.
Yeah, for sure. And are you seeing that happen early on in the deal cycle as well now? Or because I guess historically it might have been like a bit of an afterthought compared to like, you might be looking at financials and other things earlier on, but are you seeing that happen earlier in the cycle?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely on the radar people again now. So it's on the M&A cycle. Yes, it's there and there's more diligence around the ESG. And it's just that which people have to come into and warranty indemnity insurance and now having sort of specific ESG policy coverage on that. But again, as I said, on the investment side, you are now seeing it at sort of the Series A, Series B stage where investors are coming in and thinking of ESG and talking about ESG compliance. Now, so they're sort of building from the ground up. So when these companies do get to the point when they're going to exit or scale, they are ESG funds attention and have policies and processes in place for it.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And I'm curious to come back to something you mentioned at the start. You talked about there being a lot more go privates, like PE getting more involved and making more strategic investments. How are you? And that seems to be something that's probably going to continue throughout the rest of the year. How are you seeing that versus like corporate buyers? How are you seeing that like those landscape behaving differently right now?
Yeah, it's an interesting area because I mean, if you sort of look at the surface level of the market, it seems to be better for corporate at the moment. PE, obviously the uncertain rate environment, most of the PE deals are loans leveraged, so it costs more to do those deals. So there was a pitch report saying that there's 27,000 sort of portfolio companies globally for PE, and about half of those are at the stage where they're sort of at the 5-year mark, which is where you'd exit. So the big thing at the moment is lots of PE funds have portfolio companies which there is an exit opportunity because M&A has not been as active. The IPO market's not as active as it could have been, or haven't been active for the last few years. It's starting to get better. So there's a lot of pent up demand. And so what I think we're going to start to see is, IPOs slightly start to pick up now. We've had a few go in the US this year. And the window for 2024 IPOs now will be closing, so we'll hopefully see more next year. And I think what you'll start to see is you'll start to see portfolio companies of PE funds looking to exit their portfolios. So you may start to see dual track things happening, so IPO and potentially M&A transaction, because you've had some IPOs, but sort of the post-IPO performance hasn't been good. So you might see just dual track of let's run an IPO process and an M&A sort of process, and we'll go whichever leads the best results. So I think you'll start to see that aspect of that just to get liquidity into the market, so, get activity going just because of the fact there's so much pent demand. And then I think across the board, you're going to see sort of PE, they are still doing that stuff. I mean, emerging markets we spoke about, they're investing in that. The take private is somewhere where we're seeing stuff done. We've seen Dark Trace with Tomo Bravo recently, which is again 5.3 billion to take private. They're seeing opportunities in the public markets to take companies private. And that's been stemmed by a lot of the fact that a lot of smaller companies just can't sort of work on the increased regulatory reporting obligation of the public market. And therefore it makes sense to take them off and they can sort of find value there. But when you look at sort of PE corporate is mainly synergistic, right? So when they're doing the deals, it's usually there's going to be synergies there. There's usually money on balance sheet, or if they need debt, it's in sort of a more favorable term. So in some senses, this has been a more favored market for them because they can sort of go out to acquire companies which can sort of supplement their technologies. And if you look at most of the mega deals actually in this year, it has been led by corporate. But PE is still there, and I think they're going to come back. And the thing which helps shape PE is the opportunities they have, right? So yes, they can go into emerging markets. They can also make decisions a lot quicker because their decision-making process is faster, and they've got a lot more flexibility in deal structures. So when it comes to deal structure, PE, they can look at different structures. They can do joint ventures. They can do some minority investments. They can do some sort of a roll-up, etc. When corporate's buying, there's less flexibility there. It's generally sort of 100% ownership route. And that may aid in helping to get sort of approval from a regulatory standpoint quicker. But then when you look at the way PE operates, PE will again operate with a view of, yes, there's a synergy element, but again, it really is about going in and creating value and creating growth and growing the business they're acquiring with a view to adding more bolt-ons. So again, it's a different lens at which they can move it out. And that'll shape the market. And when you look at sort of where PE is going in this market, it's going to be around sort of the sectors they're focused on. It's healthcare, it's technology, it's renewable energy, all the areas where there's huge disruption, there's ability to do M&A, there's a bit of consolidation. For them, that's the piece where I think they're sort of going to shape the market and will be the ones which will lead this driving M&A going forward.
Yeah, that totally, especially with the environment. I think you're seeing more and more consolidation in various different markets. But I think that makes a lot of sense. One thing you mentioned there, which I think is really interesting, is you're seeing businesses following almost like an IPO track as well as an M&A track at the same time in parallel. And then when they come to the end of those, making a decision. Is that something that's quite unique, or quite recent, or have you seen people do that historically as well?
It's been done historically. I think it will start to come back now, just primarily because of the fact you've got sort of there's a lot of pent-up demand. The IPO markets have been closed for a while. And I think you've got in a lot of industries, to pick up your point of consolidation, there are a lot of industries where you've got that fintech, for example. You've had a lot of sort of digital bank in the market, right? They've all got very sort of high paper valuations, and they've all got to sort of at some point find an exit. And at the moment, there's sort of there's the traditional banks are acquiring some of those banks, but maybe there's a consolidation in the market, and then you list something which is bigger and better. And it has a standalone digital bank as opposed to be sort of bought up by the sort of the bigger incumbent. So I think there is this opportunity there for that, and that consolidation aspect will lead to more potentially IPOs. But the dual trap piece, to go back to that's really about, because of the fact there is so much uncertainty in the IPO market at the moment, and there is this pent-up demand, in particular on the PE front, where they need to sort of exit their portfolio company. Running that dual trap process, or it's almost hedging your bets, right? You've got, if we can't get an IPO, or we don't think an IPO is going to deliver, and there is an acquirer to sell this and it's a good return, then we'll take that route. I think that's just from the uncertainty of where the market's been and the pent-up demand. I think that's what will drive that.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And if you're in that situation, you're following the IPO track, what other kind of key considerations would you suggest to businesses that might also want to be like thinking about the M&A track as well? Is there a huge amount of extra work to be doing alongside that, or is it just kind of like liaising with different stakeholders and potential acquirers?
Yeah, I think it's liaising with different stakeholders, managing the process. I mean, look, it's a full, in any transaction is full-time job, so it's having the right team on that and putting resource to it. It's having the right advisors on board, and they're different angles, right? And IPO, there's a lot more sort of work involved in sort of getting ready to go to market. You need to sort of get your bankers involved. The M&A process, again, different processes. You would have to dual track those processes, have the right teams there. But essentially, it's kind of the same stuff in the sense that you've got to get your business ready to IPO or sell. And therefore, there's, good housekeeping, making sure there's everything rules of your, maybe internal diligence review. When we do M&A transactions, for example, we always find there's the issue, we find problems with the IPO initiative, we find the issue with options. They're just kind of doing that audit, making sure everything is, the house is great, everything order. It will get flushed to actually do that deal, and just being on the process, understand the process, and sort of chucking time and resource to it. It's not easy. It takes a lot of time off. But it really is just dedicating the time and resource doing that and trying to uncover as much, do as much legwork as you can. Like an IPO process, you really want sort of an 18-month window before you think about starting to kind of get ready. And then an M&A process, maybe it's sort of 12 to 6 months, but it's a 6-month period where you're really just talking with sort of stakeholders, advisors, getting ready to kind of go to market and getting everything in order. So it's more having that focus of a clear strategy, knowing when you're going to do it, building time frame, and put the people and resource around it.
Yeah, it makes total sense. So we're in the middle of 2024 now. What are the kind of key expectations that you have, or what are the things that you'd be expecting to see in the markets in the next kind of 6, 12, 18 months?
So I think the sector-specific M&A is going to continue. I think definitely sort of technology, energy, healthcare, life sciences is an area we're going to start to see that. I think technology feeds into all those areas. That's all going to be driven by technology. There's a drive to sort of have tech integration, digitalization. That has been fueled a lot by sort of the COVID pandemic as well, and that's changed the way we sort of work and act as lastly. That's driving a lot of technology investment. It's driving sort of healthcare, life sciences piece. So I think that in my view will continue, and I think there's huge opportunity there. I think when you put AI into that as well, and the huge investment going into AI, the potential for AI to change how we work, operate as a society, I think there's going to be an interesting time in M&A, and it's going to be really interesting to see how that sort of pans out, and how that fuels to more M&A activity as everyone tries to get ahead and sort of get the AI technology and sort of win that way. I think you'll see consolidation for sure, as we've chatted about in sectors that will continue. Energy, fintech, for example, we'll see other areas where there'll be consolidation. As I've said, I think we'll see more potentially dual tracking of IPO M&A. But I think with all those, the challenges still remain, right? The challenges also on the M&A piece, national security, antitrust scrutiny is not going away. It's not going any better. I think that's still going to be there. And the geopolitical, environmental, the geopolitical environment is going to still be there. And it is just a matter of doing your diligence, understanding what that will look like, and try and think about the best way to prepare for that.
Yeah, absolutely. There's so much we've covered in a relatively short space of time here, right? So we've talked a bit about interest rates and inflation, and how their current expectations are for that to inflation to remain stable and for interest rates to come down. This changes in government immediately just happened in the UK, but also right now looking likely in the US as well. Huge amount to be considered when it comes to things like ESG and that becoming a more prominent part of deals. PE having money to spend and pent up demand, and everything else in between. So with all of this different, and also as you mentioned, like dual tracking, looking at what might be the right time to what might be going on the market right now might be very different in 12 months time, right? And got that lead time, you want to be looking at potentially dual tracking to hedge your bets a bit. So with all of these different things going on, all this uncertainty that could come from any angle, what would be your key takeaways for business leaders right now who might be thinking about, is this the right time for a liquidity event?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I mean, time is there ever a right time? I suppose it's a question. It's tough. I think it's all about business need, right, and the opportunity. And so if you are going to engage in those transactions, I mean, some of the best transactions can be done in uncertain markets, right? So I think it's about planning and thinking about it. So from a buying point of view, having a very clear strategy, understanding what you want to achieve, and then making sure you think about the best way to do that. So what I'd say is your tips, I'd say, engage expert advisors early on in the process, so people experience in legal, financial, but make it so it's, if you're doing like a tech M&A, get people who are experienced specifically in that sector and understand the sector, because they can bring you market knowledge. So someone who understands like the way the national security investment bill would work, or SICAs work for a technology transaction, M&A transaction, can understand merger regulation around and guide you. Also think about sort of local experts on technology or buying, engage people who can understand technology, find issues with that. Data protection, GDPR, big issues in transactions, the risk of cybersecurity, understand is getting expertise who can understand and help you navigate those kind of things are crucially important. So having expert advisors can make or break deals. That's the first thing I'd say, so get that right. And the other point is just spend time doing your diligence, right? This is in an uncertain market. That's the thing. You want to make sure you do as much diligence as possible. You're being thorough. You're giving it the time to it. That's legal, financial, regulatory, even down to the culture aspect of the company and how it works. Think about trying to understand the specific risks and how you can try and mitigate those. Even with the sort of geopolitical risks, the economic risks for a local market, just trying to understand what they are. You may not necessarily always change them, but you can think about, well, okay, at least we know what they are. How can we potentially mitigate? Is it too much exposure? Do we need to think about diversification? And to the extent there is regulatory issues there, sort of engage with regulators early on in the process, try and think about sort of getting them on board early on, trying to find solutions. Because if you engage early on, there's more chance of trying to get a structured work. And the other thing I'd say is just think about generally about sort of integration of this whole asset when you are doing a deal and when you are thinking about sort of exiting the company. It's got to be something where you've got sort of buy-in from your stakeholders, your investors, your sort of key employees to make the deal happen. And then think about if you're sort of buying something, integration of the company you're buying, key retention of people. One of the things I find when I acting for a lot of companies where we sell, or sort of founders go, the biggest feedback I get is after they sort of are acquired and don't end up staying in the organization, there was just like the integration didn't work. You didn't feel like you're sort of part of the organization. So I'd say they're the key things I'd say.
Yeah, absolutely. I would totally echo that integration point. It's one of the most common topics I think we have on the podcast. We probably don't have time to dig into in depth today, given everything else we've talked about. But yeah, key things that I've taken there with all of these different things, and make sure you get the right experts in place, making sure you think about spending the right amount of time on due diligence and making sure you get all of that right. Think about the cultural aspects and engaging regulators early on, and then the integration aspect of making sure that everything comes together post transaction as well. Fantastic. Ali, it's been great to have you on the podcast today. If we want to get in touch, what's the best way for them to get a hold of you?
Email. I'm on Goodwin website. Google me, that should come up.
Fantastic. I would also highly recommend the Goodwin's events as well. I went to one last month, which was very, very good.
Yeah, very
fantastic.
Good.
Ali, thank you so much.
Great. Thanks, George.